The team I am most excited to watch in the NBA this upcoming season is the new look Utah Jazz. And not just because they have the best jersey in the sport by quite a lot. It's because of their acquisitions and the way that they've built this roster. They have been building to become a playoff team for years now, adding Jaren Jackson Junior last year, drafting Darryn Peterson number 2 overall, and I can't wait to talk about this team and the roster because I believe the Utah Jazz will be a top 5 seed in the Western Conference this year, making the playoffs, moving from dead last in the West all the way up to the top 5 because this team was intentionally having to lose games last year because they had so much talent on their roster that they weren't naturally losing games. Let's start with this. They drafted Darryn Peterson, number 2 overall. My favorite player in the draft, the guy out of Kansas who averaged 20 points per game, shot 38% from the three-point line, and is so smooth as both a ball-handling guard and can play a little off-ball, similar to guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Kyrie Irving, Kobe Bryant, Devin Booker. Those kind of players that can, handle the basketball, can distribute the basketball, but can score at such an elite level playing off the ball. And why is that so important? Because you have a young budding star in Keyonte George that averaged 24 points and 6 assists last year. These two players will be able to play off of each other great. I can't wait to watch that. Darren Peterson, we know he's 6'5", 195 pounds. He's going to be able to defend. He's athletic. He's motivated. There were some question marks with him missing games last season because, he had a lot of cramps and, wasn't able to finish some basketball games. But from everything we're hearing, those problems seem to be solved. And everything Darren Peterson said, leading up to the draft and post-draft was absolutely 10 out of 10 responses. He did a great job saying that his number 1 goal this season is to play all 82 games and make the playoffs. That's absolutely what should be his goal, winning Rookie of the Year and leading his team to the playoffs because this is the most talented player the Utah Jazz have had since Karl Malone, and I'm actually wearing Karl Malone's jersey right now. So since the 90s, they've had some great players, Gordon Hayward, Darren Williams, Andre Karolinko, Donovan Mitchell. A lot of really talented basketball players have come through Utah, but I think this player, Darryn Peterson, is the most talented player that they've had. Keyonte George was doing some great things last season, and we've seen this player, really bud into a great young stud, and I can't wait to see what he does now that he's going to be on a winning team and a winning organization, and the way that he continues to take those next steps as the basketball becomes more competitive. And a lot of times you'll see young players or teams not be great on the defensive end of the court if they're just not a very good basketball team. And this Jazz team last year was the worst defense in the NBA. But you bring in Jaren Jackson Junior, you bring in Darryn Peterson, you play Walker Kessler and these players more minutes, and they're more motivated on the defensive end of the court. I think you'll see a huge improvement on the defensive end, and the offense is going to be electric. Lauri Markkanen last year averaged 27 points and 7 rebounds a game. We know he's an all-star level player. He's been a great player for the Jazz for years. And again, another player I can't wait to see in big moments, in playoff basketball, because the way that he's developed his game and worked so hard is really impressive from his time with the Cleveland Cavaliers to the player he is today. They brought in Jaren Jackson Junior from the Memphis Grizzlies. And the reason they did that was for these upcoming seasons. Last year, he didn't play a whole lot, but we know that Jaren Jackson Jr. is one of the best defenders in the entire NBA. He averaged 22 points a game, not last year because he didn't play a whole lot of games last year, but his last healthy season that year before. Not a great rebounder, only 6 rebounds a game, but you look at the rest of the players on this team, they're going to be long, they're going to be athletic, and they're going to be able to rebound the basketball, I think. So having a guy like Walker Kessler at your center will allow Jaren Jackson Jr. to play the 4, and his deficiencies in the rebounding game I don't think will show up as much because of Walker Kessler. And when you're talking about having Jaren Jackson Jr. and Walker Kessler on the defensive end of the court, it's going to be really hard to score in the paint on this basketball team. Walker Kessler last year averaged 14 points, 11 rebounds, and we know that he's great on the defensive end of the court. Now, the big question mark with Walker Kessler is, will he sign an extension this offseason? There's been talks about him being in trade rumors, but I think the Jazz would really like to keep him. Jaren Jackson Junior plays best alongside a center, being that more traditional power forward position. So if you're able to keep, one of the best young centers in basketball, Walker Kessler, I think the Jazz should absolutely do that. And being able to sign him to an extension shouldn't be too difficult, because you have, a young player in Darryn Peterson, young player in Keyonte George, and Ace Bailey, who will probably be coming off the bench just purely for, fit reasons. He's a really talented basketball player, averaged 14-4 last season, started to come on strong. I believe he had a 37-point game, 33-point game. He did a lot of great things for the Jazz last season, but him coming off the bench will provide a great spark. And if there's a guy injured, be able to step into that starting lineup. Him and Isaiah Collier, who's a player that I really, really like, averaged 12 points, 8 assists last year. He's a great distributor of their basketball, and that's something that teams need in the NBA. One, depth. You look at all the teams that are winning titles, their depth has been incredible. The Knicks this year, the Thunder last year, the Celtics the year before that. Every team has great depth. And this Utah Jazz team goes 7, 8, 9 players deep that I really like. And Isaiah Collier is a big piece in that. He could really have a bigger, role with his talent. And, averaging 8 assists a game as a player that did not start every game for the Utah Jazz, to me, is really valuable and will provide some, unique lineup opportunities for Will Hardy, a coach that I believe is one of the smartest, best coaches in the NBA, and just has not had the roster to really show what he's capable of. And I think this upcoming season, we'll see that out of Will Hardy. And then another player I wanted to mention, Bryce Sensabaugh, averaged 15 points a game last year at the forward position. He does some nice things. I think this Utah Jazz roster is really, really deep, really well-rounded, can be good on the defensive end of the court with your 2 defensive anchors. You're bringing in Darren Peterson, who, I see as a good defensive player in the film I watched of him in college. Obviously you're taking a step to the NBA level, but he's plenty athletic. He's plenty big, all those sorts of things. He's actually almost looks bigger than 6'5" when you see him standing next to, other players and coaches and things like that. He's a big dude, and really, really impressive. I know Utah Jazz fans are really excited to get him to Utah, and he seems pretty pumped. They have Jusuf Nurkic as well. He's been in a lot of trade rumors. We'll see if they retain him, or if they want to retain him or flip him for other pieces. Him just being a veteran player. There's other teams in the NBA that need a big man, so the Jazz might be able to sell high on a player like that. But if they keep him, good backup big man, can provide some scoring off the bench. The reason I'm so optimistic about this Jazz team, because if you look down the Western Conference, there are a lot of question marks. Obviously, we know the top 2 teams are going to be Oklahoma City and San Antonio. One of those 2 teams will be the 1 seed more than likely, and those 2 teams will be heavy favorites to win the Western Conference. But once you get past there, I'm looking at nothing but question marks in the Western Conference. We still have free agency coming up, and we still could have some trades. So a team like Denver, will they make any additional moves to improve their roster? Minnesota Timberwolves just made a huge trade for LaMelo Ball. Full disclosure, I do not think that's a great trade. I don't think the Minnesota Timberwolves losing Julius Randle, losing Naz Reid, and adding LaMelo Ball, it makes them a better basketball team than they previously were. In fact, I think it makes them worse. I'm not entirely sure about the fit with LaMelo and Anthony Edwards. Denver, there's been talks. Could they try to make a move for Jaylen Brown? If they do make a move for a player like that, then you certainly have to take them seriously. The Lakers, I don't take that seriously. I don't think Luka, Austin Reeves, and I don't know if they're going to bring back LeBron or not, but that roster has a ton of holes on it. They're probably losing DeAndre Ayton. You don't know what's happening with LeBron James. all in all, that Lakers team is not a roster that I'm super high on, even though we know Luka is a really talented player. The Houston Rockets fell apart last season when Kevin Durant, was tweeting about his teammates from his burner account and really just destroyed that locker room. So it's hard to feel optimistic about them. The Portland Trailblazers did some nice things. They're another team that's kind of in that Jaylen Brown running. They have a young, not really young player, but a rising star in Deni Avdija, who was impressive last season. But you look down the Western Conference, whether it's Golden State, Memphis, Sacramento, Phoenix, the Los Angeles Clippers, it's hard to look at any of those teams and feel like they're as complete as this Utah Jazz roster. So I'm looking at OKC, San Antonio, and then I think the Jazz are right there in the mix for those spots. Now, I'm not going to predict all the way to the 3 seed because it is hard to move from the bottom seed in the Western Conference all the way up to the 3 seed in the West. But the infusion of talent this Jazz team is going to get, adding Darren Peterson, Jaren Jackson Junior, adding him. I know he played a couple games, but they tried to sit him out at the end of the season. The infusion of talent this roster is going to get will be spectacular. And they'll look great playing in Utah in those incredible jerseys. They're so clean. A lot of times with jerseys in the NBA, you see the modernization of them takes away from some of the things that we loved about the jersey. The Utah Jazz did a beautiful job with their new jersey design, keeping that mountain logo, but also those great colors, the purple, the white, look so good together with little blue stripes through it. So huge fan of what the Utah Jazz have done with their jerseys, moving away from those really bright yellow ones they had a few years ago that were a little tough on the eyes. But all in all, I could not be more excited for the Utah Jazz this upcoming season. They're going to be my most excited team to watch in the NBA. There's a huge summer league game between the Utah Jazz and the Washington Wizards. Darryn Peterson, AJ Debonsa coming up in early July that we're definitely going to be tuned in for. If you love the NBA, make sure you take a second to subscribe to the channel. Even though the season's over, we're going to be covering the league all off season and can't wait heading into next season. So appreciate y'all watching. Cyborg out.